This month's Where Did the Road Go is brought to you by 8 amazing people. Greg Ross, Illuminati, Allison Cook, Super Inframan, 36 Dingo, Michael Fritschke, Dr. O in T-Berg, and Doug Malam. Thank you all so very much for helping make this show possible.
Transmission start. Welcome to Where Did the Road Go? Join us as we wander off the path and explore lost history, consciousness, the paranormal, unexplained mysteries, alternative thought, and much more. We are present on the web at wheredidtheroadgo.com. Now here is your host, Seriah.
Welcome to this edition of Where Did the Road Go? And tonight I have back Saxon.
I think tonight I definitely have to be SuperSaxonMan.
Well, I was just going to say, or better known as SuperSaxonMan, thanks to our next guest, Mr. Matt Festa, who's the one who came up with that.
Sorry.
Yes. Matt Festa, who is the one who did the artwork for my upcoming book, which is amazing. The artwork. I'm not sure about the book.
You're not overselling that at all.
Huh?
You're not overselling that artwork at all.
Dude, that artwork is perfect.
Dude, it's pretty, like, your artwork is awesome. So I haven't seen what you've done for the book yet, but I know it's going to be badass.
Oh,
Excuse me.
you.
It's going to kick butt.
You can say ass. That's fine.
Oh, okay.
And
ass.
Go look at Matt's stuff at Tiamat's Garden on Instagram or Facebook. And for the, I think, only second time on Where Did the Road Go, we have Katie of the Night.
Hello.
And you can find her on YouTube under, I believe, Katie of the Night.
That's correct.
And so you and Matt are on The Last Exit a lot, so we have conversations there. But I feel like you three know me decently well to do this sort of thing where I was listening to Paratopia, and Jeremy and Jeff picked out like 5 or 6 questions for the other. And I thought, oh, that's kind of a cool idea. So I figured the three of you know me decently well to come up with potentially 5 or more interesting questions that we could turn into conversations.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see how this goes. And Saxon, you were going to go first?
Yeah. And so I because it's you, I have I've got a couple of questions that are a little fun mixed in.
Okay.
On top of, the usual things we talk about on Where Did the Road Go? Of the experiences that we've talked about on the show, I would love to know if there's an experience that you would like to have. But here's the caveat that goes with that. You have to choose one pro wrestler to be with you at that time to also have that experience with. And who would you choose? And how would it go down likely?
That's kind of an interesting question, especially the first part. What kind of experience would I want to have? I mean, I'm not going to lie. The couple of times I saw UFOs were pretty freaking awesome. Mm-hmm. So maybe another big UFO sighting, like the one I saw over the lake, but longer. Mm-hmm. What professional wrestler? I mean, I feel like I would owe it to Chris Jericho because he's really into that stuff. So maybe I'll go with Chris Jericho.
Okay. You answered that a lot quicker than I thought. Actually, I thought you might ruminate over which wrestler it should be.
Well, I mean, he's not my favorite wrestler by any means, but I know he's very much into paranormal stuff.
Yeah.
Plus, he's a metalhead, and so I think it would be fair that he would be the one that would appreciate the experience that I'm aware of. Although there are, you know what? I could maybe alter that because I got to find this here real quick. There's a couple of the women wrestlers in WWE that are now doing a paranormal show.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's Shotzi and I gotta find the link here. Here it is. It's Karrion Kross, Scarlett, and Shotzi. And I don't know what I'm gonna hit this and it's gonna make noise, but let's see. It's just under WWE's channel, I guess, on YouTube. Yeah, it says Karrion Kross, Scarlett, and Shotzi survived the gateway to hell at Bobby Mackey's Music World.
Huh.
So, but I think there's also, so it says the most haunted nightclub in America in the second installment of Chamber of Horrors. So this is just the what I have here is just the trailer for it. So on Peacock, they have Chamber of Horrors, which I think is Scarlett and Shotzi going out to different haunted locations.
That's fun.
That sounds pretty fun. Yeah, I just found a Bloody Disgusting article on it too, where they're going through it some here. One of the locations that's been confirmed is Pennsylvania's Penhurst Asylum.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty fun. Interesting.
And Shotzi seems very cool. So if not Jericho, then maybe Shotzi.
Okay.
I don't know if she's as much into UFOs and stuff.
Seriah, you're missing an opportunity to encounter Bigfoot when you have a wrestler with you to help defend you against the Bigfoot. Maybe even get Bigfoot in a headlock.
That assumes the Bigfoot's hostile.
That's fair.
There is, I don't know if any of you saw it, but back when they were doing the live Ghost Hunters ones on Halloween, one Halloween, it was when ECW was running on Sci-Fi, which also had Ghost Hunters. So they did a crossover where they allowed this one wrestler, and I cannot remember his name. He was walking through with them on where they were investigating on this live show. And something happened. He let out this high-pitched shriek and just took off.
That is awesome.
And it was hilarious. It was like that was the best moment on Ghost Hunters ever. Because here's this tough, muscled-up guy, and then one creepy thing happens, and he's out of there.
I feel like if you had somebody like Mick Foley with you and you ran into Sasquatch, like they might just like be like, "Oh, hey," and just start talking to each other and then go about their ways. I don't know. Just depends on who it is.
When Seriah mentioned that he wanted to have the UFO encounter, I thought it would just be hilarious if he had like an old, Space Brothers style encounter where the entity comes out just talking about, peace, love, and brotherhood and everything. But the entity is talking like Macho Man.
Oh my God. I wish I could do a Macho Man impersonation because I would do it right now.
Man, I'm trying to remember what the girl's name in AEW is who kind of has that gimmick. Like she's from space, like from the Pleiades or something. It's Chris Stratlander. That's who it is. And I don't know if she's into this stuff, but that's what it made me think of, like a contactee sort of thing.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Oh, I recognize her now. Yeah. Now it's stuck in my head too, Matt, because I'm hearing the Macho Man coming out and like, oh yeah, brother, we got to watch out about all them nuclear weapons, bro.
Well, death and stuff, it all connects. I mean, you could be encountering the Macho Man on a spaceship.
You could. You know what? If I end up getting abducted, that's what's going to happen now.
That'll be your next ketamine trip.
Yes, exactly.
Bigfoot comes lumbering out of the woods and it's Andre the Giant.
Well, see, now there would be a comparable size.
Wait, but did he actually play the Bigfoot in $6 Million Man?
Did he?
Really?
I did not know that.
I can the instant Googling.
Vigorous typing.
Yeah. I'm typing in the background. I got to look it up. Yeah, he did. Andre the Giant. He played Bigfoot in the $6 Million Man.
Huh. Well, that makes sense. I mean, if you saw a hairier Andre come out of the woods, you would definitely think Bigfoot.
Well, and what's amazing about the costume is like they've got him in a fursuit up to the neck, but his face and his beard and his hair, they might be appliances, but they just look like they colored his hair and beard the same color as the fursuit.
I'm honestly impressed they just have a fursuit in his size.
Well, right? I'm sure it was specially made.
They probably had to kill a lot of synthetic bears to come up with that fursuit.
I mean, bears. I don't think anyone made clothes in Andre the Giant's size ever. I mean, I'm sure everything had to be special made for him.
Mm-hmm. I think I'm going to drop it in the chat.
I will say, one of my co-hosts on Last Exit worked at Domino's at one point, and they were going to order something like outfit related or something, and he saw that they had a pair of size 78 pants.
Wow.
And he's like, I'm ordering them. I don't care if I get in trouble. I'm ordering the size 78 pants. And
78?
78. So on last,
it's like a round bed sheet.
Yeah, on Last Exit, we would have we would see how many people we could fit in the pants. Like bands would come up and we'd stick them all in the pants.
Oh my gosh!
It's like, can everyone fit in the pants?
Or are you going to?
Huh? No, we did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
I mean, I think the most we ever fit in there was 5 people.
I mean, that's kind of wild. I'm just thinking that like wearing like a parachute or something.
Yes. I still have them. Next time you come back, I'll show you if you remind me, Saxon.
Okay.
All right. Katie.
All right, I am ready. So here's my first question. When I read Where the Footprints End, Volume 2, there was a particular story in there that stuck with me. There was a witness who was out in the woods. I think they were actually looking for a Bigfoot, but this witness ended up getting a telepathic communication from Bigfoot, supposedly.
Mm-hmm.
And the voice said, "Don't waste your time looking for us. We show ourselves when we want to." So my question for you is, what do you make of this message when it comes to interaction with or experience of the other?
I think that falls into Kripal's saying of it happens for a reason. But yeah, I mean, I think that it definitely, it doesn't give you what you want. So going out and looking for Bigfoot, you're unlikely to find anything that people haven't already found, which are the standard. It's like ghost hunting. You don't get anything really novel most of the time from ghost hunters.
Yeah.
You get a lot of the same stuff. So I think, yeah, they show us what they want to show us, and what they want to show us is what we need to see. So you go out Bigfoot hunting and see a UFO, or you're looking for a ghost, but then you have a Bigfoot encounter.
Right. Yeah, that Bigfoot just kind of killed my hope.
To see one?
It's basically like there's no point.
Well,
your time will come.
The Survivor Man, ended up kind of doing that little bit of special on Bigfoot and stuff like that. But that was all born out of an interview he did where he got asked about Sasquatch, and he talked about mind speak or telepathy or whatever. And, he was out somewhere, I forget where he even said, but, by himself completely in the wilderness, far away from everything, of course. And anyway, in his head, he heard, "We're here if you want to see us. You have to go over this next hill and we'll wait for you to see us from there." Something like that. And, he responded like, "Well, I don't know if I'm ready for that."
I remember that. I read that too.
Yeah. It's so similar, isn't it, to the circumstances in the book in a way. I don't know. That's always been kind of fascinating to me because, when I first heard that, I probably had a pretty strict flesh and blood concept of what Bigfoot would be if it existed.
Right.
As opposed to now where, it's something, but I don't know if it's something that we can easily define. It's just the experiences we have with it to go on. And so, looking back on that from now, it's like, oh, that does make a lot of sense. If this is something that's choosing how it materializes to you and the experience that it wants to give you, not what you want it to give you, obviously.
And the thing is, like, there was a point in the past where if someone said they got a telepathic message from space aliens or Bigfoot or something like that, I'd just be like, yeah, okay. And now it's kind of like, oh no, this stuff happens. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. It seems hokey and in a way, like if you asked me about all the old contactees and things like that, I would be like, oh, they're, those guys are just making stuff up. They're goofballs. And now, it's like very much that this stuff does not behave in a way that we would consider rationally. And so it could be a completely misleading experience or something that we couldn't understand. I know we've talked offline a bit about the Encounters documentary, but they touch on that a little bit of how, this sort of promises and things get made, but they're never fulfilled. And you don't quite know what that means. But just a trickster aspect of this.
Absolutely. Oh, and I Googled it real quick. The wrestler I was thinking of was Elijah Burke.
Okay.
It was back in like 2007. But there's when I was Googling this, there's a YouTube video of 5 wrestlers' paranormal experiences. Kofi Kingston joins Ghost Hunters on Halloween. That was 2010. I never saw that. Apparently Stone Cold Steve Austin did a few ghost hunting things, but it looks like they may have been his.
Oh.
CM Punk ruins an episode of Ghost Hunters. Well, that makes sense. Baron Corbin and Tyler Breeze get creeped out by ghost children. So apparently there's a lot of interaction between wrestling and the paranormal.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Sorry I'm talking so much tonight, by the way, guys.
That's fine.
When your job is kayfabe,
yeah, You're in you're in a super liminal space at all times.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense to me that you would have some odd experiences. And, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, as a lot of these megastars have passed on, it's going to be interesting to see if people have encounters with their personas.
Although the Macho Man would definitely be the most recognizable right off the bat.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
If you got a telepathic message in the Macho Man's voice.
Yeah. I'm going to try for that next time. I'm just going to see if I can make it happen. I'll ask for it.
In your ketamine trip.
Yes. Next time I'm doing my ketamine therapy, I'll give it a shot.
I vaguely remember that story, Katie. That's a good one.
Yeah.
All right, Matt, you're up.
So yeah, I was actually talking with Katie about this before the show. Like every time when I'm listening to the show, I'll like immediately message you like a million questions. Mm-hmm. But the second I'm told to come up with a question, it's like my brain goes completely smooth.
You had like 2 weeks.
I know. So my first question, which I thought was going to be a good one, after I watched your update video, I don't know if I should even go with this question because it sounds like you're planning on maybe doing like an entire show about it sometime.
That's all right.
Like what I was thinking was I wanted to get your thoughts on like what are some of the things in the Seth material that you think are either wrong or just otherwise don't agree with.
Okay.
Ooh,
so
I like that.
What I liked about the Seth material was that Seth was pretty honest that what you were getting was a mix of what he was trying to communicate going through Jane as a filter. And you don't hear that from most of these channeled entities. It was one of the many things that was different about Seth. Including the fact that Jane didn't know if Seth was an actual other entity or another part of her personality. So like there was some religious things in there that I was kind of like, yeah, I don't know. Like that mm-hmm. feels like maybe, Jane's, even though I don't think Jane was particularly religious, I'm pretty sure she was brought up Christian. So I think some of that stuff got filtered through that way. So that would have been one of the things. I think in Seth Speaks, she talks about like, is it Jesus and two other individuals that were sharing a soul at the same time, and that Jesus would come again, and the person who was going to be Jesus would allow people to know all their past lives, and thus
I think like she mentioned something like the second coming is supposed to happen like in the 2070s or something like that.
I want to say she said that the person would be born in like 2015 or something, but maybe it's been a while since I read it. But like,
I just remember like that stuck out to me at the time when I was reading because like it was one of the few things that like gave like a specific time frame.
Yeah.
Where, like so much of it is just like very general like philosophy, whereas that is like an actual prediction.
Yeah, Seth doesn't make a whole lot of predictions at all. But the idea of somebody that could reveal to you your past lives, not with hypnosis or anything, like you just encounter this person and you can remember all your past lives, it would, I think the comment that was made either by Jane or Seth is that it would eliminate things like racism, sexism, stuff like that, because you would now remember being all those other people. It would make it very hard for you to hate on someone else when you realize, oh, I was once one of those other people.
Right. Interesting.
So that would be the first thing that sticks out. The thing is, I really didn't have a lot of stuff in the Seth material where I was like, oh, I don't agree with that at all. It's like, okay, maybe not, but like so much of it is, I don't know, self-contained. It's like reading Patrick Harper's,
Daemonic Reality.
Thank you. Like, it may not be right, but I don't really have any real criticisms of it because self-contained, it all works. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm not necessarily convinced that we live in a multiverse, but I also won't rule it out. And that's, one of the things Seth talked about is that we live in a multiverse. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I don't think there was really anything. And yeah, I had looked specifically when I started reading it. I looked for stuff that was critical of it and couldn't find anything. The only thing I could find were like Christian sites saying that Seth was a demon and that he killed Jane and all this other stuff. And I'm like, okay, so the only criticisms are nonsense.
Yeah.
But I did find a paper and then lost it about a critical look at the Seth material. And I just haven't had a chance to read it yet. So I don't know if I'll do a show on it, but a few people have requested shows on Seth. I do have a book from one of the people who went to her classes. I think it's called The Road to Elmira or something like that. And it's a short book, so I might contact them and see if they're willing to come on.
I mean, Seth is one of those things where you've brought it up like a million times, but never actually done a full show exploring it.
Part of that's because I read so much of that stuff, 10, 15 years ago. Mm-hmm. So I feel like I would need to reread it and take notes. And then it's...
Yeah, I could go both ways on that, because if you have the people that wrote the book on, they may give you perspective to go back and read it differently than you might now.
True.
So, it may make it fresh in different ways for you.
Oh, it's not that I don't want to reread it. It's that I don't have the time.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I understand that. But no, I'm with Matt. I think it would be cool to do a show on it, but with those folks particularly, because that gives you a little bit of, somebody that's had some people that have had some direct experience and material to talk about.
When I started doing this show, I was like, wait, is Robert Butt still alive, her husband? And I looked it up and it's like, oh, he died in 2009. Great. Because, they were in Elmira. That was only maybe an hour from me. Mm-hmm. And I absolutely would have gone down there and tried to get contacted him and see if I could go down there and do an in-person interview. I think that would have been awesome. There was a few people I found out died when I went to look to see if I could do interviews with them. The guy who wrote Maya, The World is Virtual Reality, who was in Binghamton and was a Cornell graduate, also co-authored Forbidden Archaeology with Michael Cremo. Can't remember his name, something Thompson. I was like, oh, I totally want to have him on. And I looked it up and went, and he's dead. Okay, well... Because again, I figured this is someone local. Maybe I could do it in person. And then he wasn't around anymore. He had left his Matrix. That's actually a very good book, the Maya virtual reality book.
I'm not familiar with that one.
Yeah. I think it's just The World is Virtual Reality or something like that. It's one of the many, Matrix-like ideas, but very well done. I really enjoyed his book.
See, so is that Richard L. Thompson?
Yes. Okay. That is him.
Oh, he had a PhD in mathematics from Cornell.
Yeah.
Where he specialized in probability theory. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, you see, I was like, oh, I need to have this guy on. I'm like, oh, man.
And here's about the author on Amazon. Richard L. Thompson received his PhD in mathematics from Cornell University, where he specialized in probability theory and statistical mechanics. He has done research in quantum physics, mathematical biology, and remote sensing, and has extensively investigated ancient Indian cosmology and spirituality. And it kind of goes on a little bit down from there. But what a interesting perspective to have when you've got somebody couched in mathematics like that. In mathematical biology. That's fascinating.
All right. So I guess we're back to Saxon.
Yeah. So, talking about Thompson actually feeds in well for one of my questions. Seriah, of the people that have contributed to research of the other written books, all of these things like that, who do you have an affinity for that's underappreciated and you wish more people were exposed to?
Patrick Harper.
Okay.
I mean, that's the first name that comes right to mind. As well, I mentioned him earlier. Who wrote with Whitley Strieber. Thanks, Brain.
Jeff Kripal?
Jeffrey Kripal, definitely. Strieber obviously has his fame and is appreciated for the stuff he's done as well as guys like Valet and John Keel. But yeah, I think Kripal, a lot of people just don't know about. Mm-hmm. And the same with Patrick Harper, where I've told this story before when I contacted Patrick Harper originally. I said, I've never heard you on any other shows or anything. What, have you done other interviews? And he's like, no. And I was like, really? Well, why not? And he's like, no one's ever asked.
Huh.
And I found that amazing. I was just like, how has nobody ever asked you to do an interview? And it's because most people have not read and never even heard of him. You could say the same about Hansen as well with The Trickster and the Paranormal. I mean, a lot of people do not know who George Hansen is, and his work is important. I mean, all three of these guys have contributed a very interesting level of data to this stuff. And I think your average person into this stuff has never heard of them. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And Hansen's a hard book to read too.
Yeah.
I mean, he would have chapters that were maybe 3 or 4 pages long, and I'd read a chapter and be like, yep, that's it for tonight. My brain's full. I'm going to digest this and then read more later.
He might be somebody that I've let y'all tell me about him, so I didn't have to read.
And he was also the most intimidating person I talked to on the show.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because when I first contacted, I mean, first of all, the book is, as I said, not an easy read, and it's not because it's poorly written. It's just the concepts are so deep. So I'm like, oh man, is he even going to want to talk to me? And then before agreeing to come on, he's like, well, let's talk before I answer you. He's like, I want to get a feel for you and what you know. And we had a great conversation. It was probably better than the interview. But I was so nervous. I was like, "Oh my God, I'm going to talk to George Hansen. I'm going to say something stupid. It's going to happen."
You were paranormal starstruck.
Exactly. Well, just
he was basically interviewing you.
Intimidated by how smart the guy really is. I mean, the grasp he has on this stuff. Now, he's also an academic, and it's good to see some of these academics like Kripal and stuff getting into this. Kenneth Ring as well. There's another one, Kenneth Ring. Who is definitely underappreciated. So many people have just aren't even aware of things like the Omega Project that he did, but he's done a whole wealth of stuff out there. A lot of it on near-death experiences, but yeah, a lot of really important work. And I think he's just one of those names people just do not know.
Yeah, a lot of these people I don't think I ever would have come across had you not brought them up on the show too. Jeannie Randall's is another one that I went back and tracked down books for because they're not even in print in many cases, and it's like, oh, time storms. Okay, this is awesome.
Jenny was not afraid to just go out there and throw out interesting concepts. So you read her different books, and they're not necessarily, don't necessarily fit with one another. She's not pushing just one idea in every book. It's what ifs and different ways of looking at the stuff. And yeah, I mean, I guess Jenny fits in that category too, that a lot of people have probably never read her stuff, and some of it is absolutely phenomenal. Mind Monsters, I think, has been the one that blew me away the most, where she deals with how consciousness interacts with this stuff and how we may be co-creating some of it.
I haven't read that one. I'll have to go look for it. But that sounds like straight up R and Greg Bishop's alley and everybody else.
Yep. So I'm glad you brought her up. That's another good name to add to that list of people who are underappreciated. I mean, she's not completely unheard of for most people, but because she's the one that coined the Oz factor idea that this is where she called it the Oz factor, when you have that experience where everything goes quiet and you feel sort of out of place in reality.
I didn't realize she coined that.
Yep, that's her.
Oh my gosh!
In fact, I think she has a website. She did it a couple of years ago because I was trying to get her on the show because she kind of resurfaced. She had been taking care of a family member for a while, and she resurfaced, and she has a website that's something like the ozfactor.com or something like that. If you Google Jenny Randall's website, you probably will find it. And it looks like she was going to do a bunch more stuff, and then I don't think anything's really come of it.
Oh.
And I only heard her do one interview, which was an older investigator, and I forget who it was exactly. Tim something. Man, yeah, my brain's not cooperating with remembering names at all. But it was a great interview, and it sounded like that she was kind of coming out of her hiatus into this stuff. But I haven't really heard too much from her, and I tried contacting her and never got a response. So, Katie, I guess we're up to question 2 for you.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I work on a college campus, and like a lot of college campuses, it's reportedly haunted. So we have rumors and legends and stories that people are always spreading around about this building and this ghost and whatnot. And I'm not even sure how haunted these buildings really are. But I can't help but wonder if we could potentially, by putting so much stock and hopes into these places being haunted, by perpetuating these legends, are we in fact making these locations potentially more quote unquote haunted? I wanted to know your thoughts about that. Like us wanting a place to be haunted so bad that maybe it becomes so?
Oh yeah, definitely. Because you're putting energy into the environment anyway, and colleges are very liminal to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
It's a temporary place for people. And then you have the fact that you are, if you're wanting it to be there, you have the Philip experiment type of thing going on where you're potentially creating a haunting, especially if you have an urban legend to accompany it.
And some of these ghosts have names.
Yep.
Not even of people who actually existed, but we'll just like name the ghost something.
David Weatherly talked about a plantation where they had an urban legend of this woman from back in when it was a slave place, you know, when they had back in the 200 years ago or whatever, and there was a whole story about her killing all these people and all this stuff, and people got pictures of this apparition and stuff, and she never existed. Like when people investigated it, they found out this person never existed, but you were getting consistent pictures of this person. People were picking up consistent information, like psychically, about this person without knowing anything about it. But yet, there's no evidence this person ever existed. It's pretty much created by our belief in it, and probably an area that was also heavy in energy.
Yeah, was that the Myrtles plantation?
It might have been. I don't remember.
I think it might be. Yeah.
And Jenny Randall's site is ozfactorbooks.com.
Oh, cool.
So it doesn't look like it's been updated much. Yeah, look to this page for news about exciting books coming to this site in 2018.
Anytime now.
Yeah.
But there's a bunch of stuff on the site about her, why she took a hiatus and stuff like that. Oh, there's an email. I don't know if I tried that email. Maybe I'll try that email at some point and see if I get a response.
Speaking of like universities kind of coming up with these haunted characters or the plantation, I saw something the other day that was talking about why you shouldn't be afraid of like people messing around with magic or curses and things like that. It's kind of interesting that was the angle they were taking, but what they were really getting to was like most people aren't actually working with the entities that they think they are. They're just working with the egregore that was sort of created in place of it.
Yeah.
And so you don't have to worry about that near as much as somebody that actually has met, one of these things. And, an egregore is what I kind of prefer that more than tulpa these days, to be honest.
It's a slightly different concept, though.
Yeah, for sure. But when you've got like a group of people manifesting something, I always think it's a little bit more.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it helps with the abstractness of it.
So, Katie, have you ever had any experiences while there?
Just little things. But I also played with a Ouija board there, and that was,
that's a plus.
That got some results that were pretty weird. But yeah, I had some experiences there, just like sounds, knocking on the wall. My husband experienced a whole lot more than I did.
Really?
He had like footsteps, like running footsteps, and laughter in his ear, and shadow people,
wow.
All kinds of stuff. But me, not really so much, just minor things.
So you're the one more interested in it, and you're the one not having the laughter in the ear.
Correct.
That's appropriate.
Right.
You should like incorporate the Ouija board into your job. Like someone comes in like, hey, where do I go for registration? I must contact the spirits. Like, okay, no, I'm good.
Yeah. I live in Alabama, so that would not go over well. They might arrest me or something.
Burn her.
All right, Matt, you're up.
Okay, this is another sort of like, I guess, philosophy type question. Like, given how extremely like intimate and personal so many paranormal experiences are, that it's like specifically for that person, for their own like growth and development and everything, do you think the paranormal should be studied scientifically, or would that kind of be missing the point?
I think studying it like we are to try and maybe figure out what's going on with PK and things like that doesn't take away anything from the personal aspect, because it's usually minor stuff we're picking up. But it might help us understand how, on a bigger sense, this stuff works. So I don't think there's anything wrong with scientifically studying it, but I don't think you're going to get anything overly useful or anything overly like, I don't want to say conclusive, but like big. Like you're not going to get a really big manifestation most of the time. And according to Shirley Lee Black, that even when they did have big PK events, a lot of the researchers didn't want them. They were like, no, we're having a hard enough time getting the small ones accepted by scientists. We're not even trying with the big ones. So I think there is value in studying them scientifically, because eventually it may tell us a little more about how our reality works, let us in on maybe some of the secrets that we don't already know, even though a lot of people seem to think we have it all figured out. And then, and at the same time, you know, it's like you're studying the mechanism that gives you the personal experience, I guess, is the way to put it.
That makes sense. Like the way, you know, I was thinking about it when I came up with that question, you know, it's like studying this stuff in like scientific laboratory type settings and everything. It just, to me, felt as like counterintuitive as trying to like mathematically prove that a painting is beautiful. It's like like completely outside the point of the question.
But the thing is, if we figure out how this stuff works, who knows what other vistas of like information that might open up, things we never thought about. You know, if we apply how PK actually works or psi actually works, and we start looking at it in relation to other systems, we may suddenly be like, "Ooh, wait, can we do this?" You know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Plus, maybe it'll also help you know, people realize how interconnected we are to our reality and our environment. Rather than feeling so separated from it. If there's something that flows between us that doesn't keep us as completely separate entities, you know, there's a connection there. It's kind of like the past life thing. Maybe we'll understand, oh, we're all connected. Maybe we shouldn't be hurting one another.
Mm-hmm. You know, I always kind of wonder too, where, and you touched on this some in the part of your answer too, Seriah, but you know, we kind of lump the paranormal, or not us, but people outside of our community lump the paranormal all into one bucket. And it seems like, you know, I love the way Dr. Kreipel and folks are looking at a lot of these experiences through the humanities.
Yeah.
And then, you know, something like you're saying, PK, it makes sense to try and look at that in a scientific environment, because it seems maybe something that is closer to our understanding of physical reality we could look at versus, you know, meeting some
haunted house.
Yeah, a haunted house. And like, you know, even just trying to divest ourselves of the notions of ghosts, you know, like, does this ghost necessarily mean that it was somebody that lived here 100 years ago or what? All we know is that there's activity happening and, you know, there's laughter in your ear and things like that. So how do we figure that out? Or, you know, some of these encounters with things people call aliens. And it's baffling and makes no sense at all and completely irrational and full of high strangeness, you know?
So the other thing with PK is that in doing these type of very sensitive laboratory experiments, we see how much of an influence through PK, through psi, that the people doing the experiments have on what they're finding. You know, it's very, you know, you see a very, they find a very distinct. And it's not like an unconscious bias or anything like that. It's if the researcher knows the answer to whatever the person is trying to resolve, the person then has a better chance of actually getting the information, even if it's randomized and all this other stuff. But it brings into question how much, when we do any kind of laboratory research, how much of the data is being influenced by us on the psi level, that, you know, we're getting, these repeated results because we think we're supposed to get these repeated results. Mm. And we just don't realize that we're using this ability to kind of manipulate reality a little and turn it into what we think we're supposed to be finding.
I mean, that goes back to Seth, who said your expectations create your outcome.
Right. So it's, that's why I say, like, studying in a lab might give us, you know, more insight into other stuff if we allow it to. Mm. Currently, we're not going to let that happen.
Yeah.
So what are we back to? Saxon?
Yeah. So kind of keeping on with some of these different figures we've talked about, you know, I was curious, you know, if you were able to, say, learn magical practices from, you know, anybody, you know, Crowley, John Dee, Austin Osman Spar, who would you pick? And why would that be an influence that you would want to work with? If you don't mind answering all that.
I don't know if I have a good answer for that. I mean, Crowley, for all of the stuff he read, he doesn't seem like somebody I'd necessarily want to hang around.
Right.
Spare, maybe. I don't really know enough about Spare to say whether or not I'd like to be around him more. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure same with like Kenneth Grant. Like, Kenneth Grant's really interesting, but I don't think I'd want to learn any, you know, like have him teach me stuff. He seems a little little off kilter sometimes. Yeah, I don't think I have a good answer for that one. I don't think there's anyone that I would specifically be like, oh, I wish this person could tutor me.
Right.
Plus, I've also found that, following my own instincts on this stuff works better than anything that I followed by somebody else.
Right, for sure. Yeah, obviously, since we've been talking about the Collins lead, I got a little fascinated with Jack Parsons again because he was such just a crazy character.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But don't necessarily want to go hang out with Jack Parsons.
Right. Yeah, some of these people are fascinating, but I wouldn't necessarily want to be friends with them.
Right. It's like, if I could have Greg Bishop interview Jack Parsons, that would work.
Yes, exactly.
I just want to hear what they say.
Huh, that would be interesting. I mean, I'd totally love to interview any of these people. I'd be intimidated in, I think, interviewing Crowley, because who knows where that would go.
Let's say he would take it whatever direction he felt was the most unsettling for people listening, I think, just because.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I don't know that I would get much value out of the interview because it would be a lot of him messing with me, asking him questions. So, all right.
Let's all be thankful Crowley wasn't around during the internet.
Oh, God.
Yes.
Imagine his Twitter.
There is that movie that Bruce Dickinson wrote that's called Crowley. Are any of you aware of this?
Nope.
No, I don't think so.
It is awful. It is absolutely awful. So Bruce Dickinson of Iron Maiden made this movie called Crowley. I think there's another title for it too. And it's about they have this artificial intelligence, and as they're researching the artificial intelligence, they put all of Crowley's writings into it, and it manages to basically become Crowley and then escape from the machine the consciousness escapes from the machine it's in. And it is awful.
What?
It's a very low budget movie, and it's funny because you would think with Bruce Dickinson making it, it would have been more, gotten a little more press, but I think people realize, wow, this is bad.
Wow. Yeah, I'm looking at some stuff. So here's an article on it from December 2006.
Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah. But, here's the crazy thing. We've talked about digital egregores in the show. At this point, messing around with AIs and things, I'm like, who knows?
I mean, if you plug all that stuff in, you could interact with something that knew Crowley's stuff inside and out, but it still wouldn't be Crowley. Even if you took the huge volumes of stuff he's written, it's still not, it's never going to be the person.
Oh, but it would pretend to be Crowley just to mess with you for a bit, I think.
All right, Katie, you're up.
Okay. So this is not a question I had planned, but it's something that came up last weekend. So I thought I would share here and get your thoughts. So I was in a Lyft ride, like Uber, but Lyft.
Yeah.
And my Lyft driver, I was telling her I was in town for a horror movie convention. And so my Lyft driver said she does not mess with horror movies because that stuff comes out of the TV. And she proceeded to tell a story about one night her kids were watching a movie. And she said, "That's not a scary movie, is it?" And the kids were like, "No, it's not." And so they, later they all went to bed, and she kept getting woken up by strange noises in the apartment. Anyway, long story short, the next morning she asked her kids, "What were you really watching last night?" And they admitted they were watching The Exorcist. And the sounds and things she heard in her apartment sounded very stereotypical cliche paranormal experience. So I thought it was really interesting because she didn't have that bias of knowing that a scary movie had been watched in her house that night. Anyway, so A, do you think things can, quote unquote, come out of the TV, depending on, what sort of media is being consumed? And B, have you ever had something come out of the TV?
B, I don't think so. A, I definitely think if something is affecting you emotionally, it's sort of coming out of the TV. So if her kids were scared by The Exorcist, they may have been giving off just enough energy for a little bit of poltergeist activity to kick up.
I love that. I didn't even think about that. That is a great point.
For some reason, it pops a memory I almost forgot about. When I was a kid watching, it must have been, it was the Friday the 13th 3. the 3D one. Me and a friend were watching it. My brother, who was a few years younger, is like kind of standing in the hallway, sort of watching, but he's not sure he wants to watch. And it was right by the basement stairs, and my mom's office was in the basement, and my mom starts walking up the stairs, and he just starts screaming and runs away. So he was right on that tense thing, and as soon as he heard footsteps, he was just like, nope. But I mean, yeah, I think in a sense, anything that moves you emotionally it's sort of coming out of the TV. It doesn't have to be negative. I don't think any girl from a well is climbing through your TV set anytime soon. But the stuff can affect you.
When she said things come out of the TV, I thought you meant like she just watched The Ring and thought it was a documentary.
Right, yes.
Right. I kept thinking like Poltergeist where that like hand comes out of the TV.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
I'm I mean, when you think about white noise and stuff from old TVs, I mean, that's something that if you just sat there and stared at it, you might have some kind of vision of something coming out of the TV.
Like scrying, but with static.
Yeah, exactly.
That reminds me of I forget the character in the Matrix that was always the one that stayed on the ship that betrayed them.
Oh yeah, I don't remember.
Looking at the code scrolling by, and he's like, after a while, you actually start to see the things in the code. Cypher. Yes, there we go. Yeah. With the things coming out of the TV, I always wondered, not coming out of the TV, but sort of a connected element of that is, especially with kids where they have the situations of seeing their like toys playing at night. Mm-hmm. There's so many stories like that where, my Tickle Me Elmo would get up and dance in the room to entertain me, at night and stuff like that. And, and a lot of that stuff sounds really creepy now, but you could tell that the person that had the experience during the time, it was, completely benign, fine, nothing scary about it. But, it goes back to that sort of like the emotional qualities that you have as a young person, because that's where your poltergeist activity overlaps too.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're a kid. You tell your parents, oh, my Omo came to life and danced for me. And they'll be like, that's nice, honey. And then after a while, they start telling either you get the message that they don't believe you, or they flat out tell you, no, that's just your imagination. That's not really happening. And then eventually they just start blocking that stuff out.
Saxon, with what you were saying about just, the kids treating it as normal or even positive experiences where we hear that and think it's creepy. I wonder how much of that has to do with just how culturally conditioned we are through media to associate so much of this phenomena with horror stories. It's not creepy in and of itself. It's just that the popular perception shaped through our media is that it only occurs in those types of stories.
That's a good point.
Right. I think that's a great point because, it's when you tell those stories, you're intentionally taking something that is innocent and twisting it into something sinister. You get a real macabre effect from that. And I think that's a good call out, Matt. Oh my gosh, there was something in my head that was related to that. I was trying. Yeah, it was back to the that Encounters documentary. Somebody makes a point in there of talking about how the phenomena is either portrayed as alien invaders, kind of like something we talked about earlier, or our space brothers. And why is it only those two things that we have the options to choose from?
Yeah.
And so all of us, we have the ET story from when we were kids, but most of media around anything from beyond is scary.
Yes.
It's Geiger's Alien, or it's Fire in the Sky, or what have you. Mm-hmm. And so, automatically, it was Dr. Newth. Kevin Newth, is that right? I probably got his name wrong, but he's in there a couple of times, and he brings that up, and he makes a comment in there. Oh my gosh! Hopefully, I can pull my brain together with this. Of maybe we don't really want to find out about this stuff, and that's why we tell ourselves those stories, because it's easier than dealing with what it actually is.
Mm.
Outside of the propaganda and influence campaigns and what have you, but. This is also a defense mechanism for our own egos, basically.
Well, it may also be that we can't quite process it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think so.
You have that Lovecraft quote that that fear of the unknown is like the oldest fear of mankind.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And despite people insisting they know one way or the other, you have on the extreme one side people insisting that none of this stuff happens, none of this stuff is real. And then people on the other side who will give you a list of all the star systems all the different aliens come from, and have it all figured out. I think that all comes back to partially a little bit of that fear of the unknown.
I think so.
As well as maybe a little ego.
A little ego, and then also the phenomena, maybe
catering,
being a trickster again.
Yeah. All right, are we up to? Oh, actually, let's take a quick break, and then we'll be right back. Quick mid-show break here. First, contact info. Everything Where Did the Road Go related can be found at wheredidtheroadgo.com. All our social media links, addresses, email addresses, everything is right there. You can also become a patron. It's only $3 a month, as it has been since the start. No raising prices on my end, and it gets you extra content every month, a bunch of extra content pretty much every week, and some special surprises here and there. So help us out, become a patron. It means a lot to keeping this show going. All right, my recommendation this week is something a podcast I can't believe I didn't recommend already. But it's not on my list, as I'm trying to update that list every time I make you a recommendation, so I don't recommend the same things over and over. The Magnus Archives. This one took me a little bit to get into, but damn, is it good. And it has an arc story that they actually come to a conclusion with. It is some dark stuff, and it's a horror podcast, fiction, audio fiction. And if you like horror and you like really dark horror, that's the one to listen to. That one is, wow. It starts off as this place, this archive, Magnus Archives, I guess, where they're collecting weird stories, but over time they start seeing patterns in the stories, and that's when things start getting really interesting. So I definitely recommend it. It had a great run. It ended cool, and it's very unique. So that's my recommendation for this week. The Magnus Archives. That's Magus Archives. All right, back to the show.
Looking for something to do after Halloween is over? Are you into the strange, bizarre, and unusual? On November 3rd, 4th, and 5th, the Strange Realities Conference is coming back to Nashville, Tennessee, and streaming online. Come join us for 3 days exploring mysteries, supernatural, the occult, weird history, and more, featuring lectures, presentations, and workshops by Tim Banal, Zach Hunt, Leslin Vance, Bryn Collier, Tobias Whalen, Brent Rains, Joshua Cutchin, Kiki Dombrowski, Recluse, Nathan Isaac, Christopher Ernst, Aaron Goulias, David Metcalf, Timothy Renner, Mallory Sawinski, Seriah Ascap, and special guest Steve Burke as your Master of Ceremonies. Make sure to join us for the fun and informative weekend online and at SIR Nashville November 3rd and 4th and online only November 5th. Tickets are available at strangerealitiesconference.com.
All right, you're listening to Where Did the Road Go? And I have SuperSaxonMan. I have the guy who named SuperSaxonMan, and Matt Festa.
Hello.
And Katie of the Night.
Hi.
And Katie has a YouTube channel called Katie of the Night, and Matt has Tiamat's Garden, where all his artwork is. So if you Google Tiamat's Garden, a lot of Dungeons & Dragons stuff comes up, Matt.
Mm-hmm.
But it's
Tiamat, been a goddess for whatever, like 6,000 years. Like the first thing that comes up when you Google her is like Dungeons and Dragons and Final Fantasy.
But if Tiamat had to find her way back into the world,
if you Google Tiamat's Garden Instagram, you can see a bunch of Matt's artwork.
Soon to be featured on the cover of a certain book.
That is true. I almost asked you if I could share it on the video I did, but I figured we'll hold it off because I'm not done with the book. And as I told you, you're going to have the cover done before I have the book done.
And I was worried about not having the cover done in time.
Yeah. Told you. I know how my life goes. Not smoothly or fast. But I mean, the book is almost done. I mean, and you're doing the cover actually kind of helped push me toward getting the book done, honestly.
Glad I could help.
Like, oh, now I want people to see the cover. I hope they like the book too, but man, I want people to see the cover.
Jeez, you are like so overselling that cover, man.
I'm
like,
really
I am
not.
glad you're that happy with it, but dude.
I'm pretty sure it's going to be awesome because I've seen your art too. So
you took, without even knowing it, you gave it a feel of one of my favorite album covers of all time. And you incorporated so many little details that I never even would have thought about, and really just homogenized that entire first part of the book into a cover that worked perfectly.
Including details I had to cover up because you didn't tell me you were joking.
Yeah, there was that. So I'm in the. I still feel bad about that. I'm in the cover, and or in the image, and what did you say? You were gonna.
So like, I think when did it start? Like, it was still just the penciling when I was showing you like how you were positioned in that.
Yeah.
And like, I can't remember which one of us initially said something about like what should be on your shirt or something like that.
Because I think you suggested Voivod, because Voivod.
Oh, right. I was going to have you in a Voivod shirt because you always mentioned like how big of an impact they've had on you over the years.
Well, not so much even that. I mean, I really, they did have an impact on me, but they pop, like, I'll be in a dream in a record store always looking for Voivod stuff. And I'm just like, why Voivod? Like, of all things. So, yeah, you said Voivod, and I think I said something like, just have it be Shadow.
You said you should be in Shadow. And I'm like, I haven't heard of that band. Like, you sent me like the logo and everything. So I'm like, okay. And I drew that logo onto your shirt.
Yes.
Yeah. You're laughing now. And then like when I sent you the updated photo of like you like fully drawn and everything like that, you're like, what's written on my shirt? And I'm like, what do you mean what's written on your shirt? This was your idea.
I mean, I meant just Shadow. It's just, but when you said you'd never heard of that band, I'm like, you've never heard of a band called Shadow? And I just grabbed a Shadow CD and sent you the logo.
Well, yeah, because like I had asked, because like I instantly went on, Encyclopedia Metallum. I'm like, okay, there's 50 bands named Shadow. Which one do you mean? And then you sent me that photo of an album. I'm like, okay, so like I'll go with that logo.
I was being facetious. I thought you were being facetious when you were asking about the band, not realizing you misunderstood what I was saying.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an awesome cover. Who are we up to?
Let's see. Am I
last? I don't remember.
Matt, are you after Katie or
I think it's Matt.
I think it's
my
Matt.
turn. Okay. Let me look at my list of questions.
Unprepared.
Okay, so I'm sorry,
Well, I got them all flustered talking about the cover.
So this one, I'm like still not sure like how the best way to phrase it, because like I wrote it down and it's so rambling. Like when we talk, or at least like people in our realm of considering these things, when we discuss the paranormal, we talk about like how so much of it is like all the same sort of thing, just presenting itself in different ways, whether it's, poltergeist, UFO, whatnot. But like even when we put all the things under that one umbrella of just like different manners in which it can manifest, it still seems like there are two very different ways in which people interact with it. Like there is the group of things where it's so much more of like a passive natural phenomena, like you're just coming across different aspects of nature, whereas there are others where it's a very obvious like intelligence that you're interacting with. And I was wondering if like, just like where you think that distinction would come in, or if it's even valuable to think about it all under the same, like just overarching term of paranormal as a singular phenomena, or like just in general, what you think about that.
That's a really good question. See, you undersell yourself. You were all like, I don't have very good questions.
That's a really good question.
Thank you. Good night. I'm out.
So
My work here is done.
The more natural stuff. I mean, so you're talking like environmental type of stuff that just affects us?
Yeah, like, I mean, to use Josh's terms, like an ecology of all this stuff, there's like so many things that like people will come across that it's like, it's just a much more passive thing. Like, maybe this is a terrible metaphor, but like you're walking through the woods of your life and you come upon like just the spiritual equivalent of like an earthquake or something where it's like, a big dramatic thing, but it's like not aimed at you. Whereas other like big dramatic things, with like a very definite like intelligence behind it, where there's like this reciprocal relationship with it.
Yeah. And I think that's why the non-autobiographical book I'm working on kind of tries to break this down, where it's like, okay, yes, there are these similarities, but there's a lot of factors there. So yeah, there's natural environmental stuff that can cause us to have experiences. And then you can combine that with sensitive people, liminal time spaces, maybe the action of an other in certain locations that's not related to the environment. Because, maybe some of this stuff comes and goes, like it gets closer to us and more perceptible, and then stops being such in certain locations. So, whereas there might just be certain locations that have a lot of energy. So I think you end up with common threads like poltergeist activity, like lights, but you could have a whole host of things that create similar phenomena. So a ghost, for example, could be poltergeist phenomena. It could be a residual thing that anyone in the right place and time could see. It could be an actual spirit. It could be an actual dead person. It could be a tulpa of some sort or an egregore. And I'm sure there's probably a dozen more things that I'm not thinking of at the moment or that we just don't even have concepts for yet that could all make us say, oh, we saw a ghost. But some of them would be active. Some of them would be more natural. But to us, they all kind of appear the same way. It's like to use a music metaphor. You say to someone, "Oh, you listen to metal," and they go, "I've never heard metal. I've never heard anything metal before." And then you play them, I don't know, two different metal bands that sound completely different, and they go, "Oh yeah, no, yeah, this sounds like that other band." And it's like, no, it doesn't. It doesn't sound anything like that other band, other than the fact that there are loud guitars. So maybe when we're having these experiences, we just don't have the finesse to understand, oh, these are two completely different sources. They just kind of look the same to our underexperienced brains. Because if you take Death Angel, they don't sound like Nightwish.
Yeah.
But they're both metal bands.
Or like Ghost and Gorgoroth. It's like two very different things going on there.
Right. But, to a lot of people, they hear heavy guitars or whatever, and they're like, oh, yeah, this sounds the same. It's like, no, it doesn't. Even stuff that's similar doesn't necessarily sound the same when you have an ear for it. When you really know what you're listening to. It's like, having any particular skill. One person may look at something a carpenter has done and be like, oh yeah, that's good. But another carpenter can look at it and see it in a completely different way because they're seeing details that the average person wouldn't even notice. So I think when we're encountering these paranormal things, because they're so rare, none of us really have that expertise level of experiencing it. So we don't notice necessarily the fine details and the slight differences that might be there and might be prevalent if we experienced them more regularly. Or if there was some way to understand what we were looking at. And it's so subjective that I don't know that that's something we can do. Was that an okay answer?
It was adequate, I guess.
All right. I mean, did it answer what you were asking?
Yeah, like definitely a lot to think about. I see where you're coming from with that. And again, these are just like really broad philosophy questions I'm coming up with. I don't expect you to have like the definitive answer.
No, that was the definitive answer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're done. We can now stop talking about paranormal stuff forever. I just solved it all.
This is the last episode.
The road is ended.
There you go.
We found the end of the road.
Way to say that.
It ends with Matt. All right, so we're up to Saxon, I think.
Yeah, I'm actually going to kind of build off of Matt's question. Actually, I'd written this down as kind of an aside, and I was like, no, this is kind of perfect now. Of all of the popular, encounters, events, what have you that, most of us are familiar with, if there was an experience that you could point someone to that is not as familiar with, the diversity of thought that we have about these things, what experience or event or encounter or whatever would you choose to direct them towards? To kind of be like, this encompasses a lot of the weirdness, or this encompasses, lots of different aspects of what we, how this is not the typical UFOs or flat, or, nuts and bolts and
I almost thought you were going to say flat Earth.
Me too.
Thought about it.
Mothman.
And I thought you might say that, actually.
Huh?
I actually thought you might say that.
Well, because it has such a vast array of different things going on. I would also, say like Hunt for the Skinwalker. Even though there's a little bit of question if they were doing some psyops on these people too. I think there's enough genuine phenomena there and it's so broad and different all the way across the board. So I think those two situations would be the ones, that I would point someone to and be like, look, there's such a vast array of things here. You can't just say this is one thing.
Yeah. With Mothman Prophecies, I saw the Richard Gere movie before I had read the book.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And, I probably saw it not too long after it came out on, DVD or whatever. And, but I was familiar with like the general account of people seeing a flying red-eyed thing, but I didn't know all of the other experiences Keel or Durenberger or anybody else was having around there. Just the immediate, folks that saw Mothman at the TNT facility there.
Yeah.
And so the way the movie tried to capture the weirdness of it all kind of confused me at the time, because I was like, why are they making this more of an abstract thing? Like, I thought this was about a flying man that was gray and scared people. But after, go ahead, Matt.
Well, I was going to say, like, that's actually exactly what I was thinking, because like the main reason I want to point people towards the Mothman Prophecies is because I am like just endlessly frustrated with the internet's concept of Mothman being a literal moth person cryptid.
Yeah.
Right.
And like not having any understanding of like the entire constellation of phenomena that was surrounding this event.
Right. It made the movie better now to me after I read the book. And
right.
You got like, Keel walking through areas on the road where he feels like perilous fear, and then he steps back and it all goes away. And all of the harassing phone calls and, Indrid Cold. And I mean, all of this stuff is just, it's such a cool book, even if you weren't as into the paranormal, just to read it as like, kind of Kolchack the Night Stalker adventure story. It's like, man, this is insane. And it's awesome.
It's just a really fun book to read.
Yeah.
That's
because Keel, on top of everything else, was a good storyteller.
That's true.
And that's unfortunately not something all paranormal investigators are. Sometimes you read the books and you're like, okay, there's a lot of interesting data here, but they don't know how to tell a story with it.
Right.
And they're not really necessarily trying to tell a story. They're just trying to, make their point.
Yeah.
Whereas,
or just write in general, because there are so many paranormal books I've read where like, yes, you are brilliant. These are incredible ideas, but my God, hire an editor.
Yes, there's that.
Yeah. Well, my secret dream is for somebody to do a Netflix show about Keel, starting with his adventures that led to Jadu, and just go through his life like Indiana Jones Chronicles.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that because it would be like Indiana Jones crossed with Kolchack. I'm like, this would be awesome.
And even if you look at Strieber's stuff, it's not all UFOs. But you have to look, you're not going to necessarily get that just from communion, Whereas if you read the Mothman Prophecies, it's not just a cryptid, it's not just UFOs, it's poltergeists, it's just, and some of it, you don't know, like any of this stuff, you don't know if it's legit. How much of this was it Mosley that was messing with Keel every once in a while? With some of the prank calls and stuff, it's there's always that human trickster element that you have to work out too. But overall, the stuff for the most part probably happened just like Keel said it did.
Yeah. Well, I mean, poor Woody Durenberger, he went off pretty far places in his mind trying to cope with what was going on with him too.
Yeah.
That's some very interesting stuff. And, the fact you bring up Strieber is good too, because, if you know Communion, especially if you just know the movie, you don't know about really, it kind of gets to it, but all of the deceased persons and things like that that showed up, that's not quite in there. And
well, he left
once you start looking at this stuff, you're like, man, this is all over it.
He left it out of his initial experience, even though he was, I think a friend of his who he didn't know was dead. I don't think he knew he was dead. Was in with these aliens in one of his first encounters, and he left it out because he's like, no one's going to believe me.
Yeah,
he's like, it makes it sound even crazier. I'm not putting that in there. And it was only after Anne started saying, look, there's so many of these that it has to have something to do with what we call death, that he was willing to come out and be like, okay, so the thing I left out.
Yeah, that's why I always like to think of communion and transformation as just like one singular work, because like as great as communion is, it is really incomplete without all of that follow-up stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I really like transformation as well. Some of the other ones are hit and miss. I've never been able to decide what I think about the key. I think it's interesting, but like as far as its validity, I don't know what to make of it.
I still haven't read that one.
So, all right, are we up to Katie?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, Seriah, I know that you may or may not hang out in graveyards sometimes.
I do have a propensity for that.
I follow a channel on YouTube that conducts paranormal investigations in graveyards only. And several years ago, I heard someone say that graveyards aren't haunted because there's a lack of a human presence there. So there aren't people there. And they had this theory that graveyards aren't haunted because there aren't humans occupying that space. However, I know that graveyards can be considered a liminal space, which may be more prone to having activity. So what are your thoughts on paranormal activity in cemeteries?
Was it the people who investigate in cemeteries saying there wasn't any?
I can't even remember. I think I saw it on a paranormal documentary on TV years ago. Okay. Someone was like, "Oh, cemeteries don't tend to be haunted."
So in the vast amount of cemeteries I've been to, only a few of them have been weird, and they're usually the old ones, which sounds very Lovecraftian. But I often, it comes down to that idea of sacred spots. So if you're, not in our modern culture, and you say, well, we need a place to bury our loved ones, you pick a sacred spot. And that sacred spot's probably sacred because stuff happens there. And that becomes the cemetery or the graveyard. Modern day, we just say, we need a graveyard. Where do we have space? Well, we'll put it there.
Right.
So you may have in some of these older graveyards the fact that they were energy spots. Plus, you have a lot of residual energy, I would think, from people mourning. That's a heavy amount of energy when when you're burying somebody. And of course, some energy put into it from people going there, it's a graveyard. It must be haunted.
Mm.
And so you also have the expectation and the liminality. The ones here that I've had weird stuff happen in, the one in Ithica is directly in the center of Ithica, but it's a very old graveyard. Saxon, you went to that one with me, right?
Yep, that's the one. You had the Shadow Man experience there, right?
Yes. Yeah.
With the Oddfellows out there too, yeah.
Yep, and that's, there's a creek that runs right down the middle of it. So you also have the idea of running water creating energy. But it's also liminal in the fact that it sits between Cornell University and the city of Ithaca. So on the bottom part of the graveyard, you're in the city, and in the top, you're in Cornell, and it's on a hill. So there's a lot of liminal stuff going on there. Like I said, it's very old. I think it was the first cemetery in Ithaca. So again, it may have been picked for reasons that we just don't know.
Yeah.
And there's a Buddhist temple in Ithaca, and it is, I forget the details. It's been a while since I looked it up, but Ithaca is considered the third most powerful energy spot on the planet, according to them.
I remember you telling me that.
Yeah. So, I mean, who knows why? I don't think they've ever, published much about it. But the other ones, the one was a Potter's Field, which also went back really, really far. Back to like the 1700s or stuff. Both of these have Civil War graveyards. And, with a Potter's Field, you got something different going on because you probably don't have a lot of mourners and stuff. But it's just, it could be just the location in general is odd. And maybe the fact that these people didn't have anyone who, was there when they died, may have left some kind of weird energy in the area as well. That place has never felt sinister, though. That place has always felt really pleasant to be in.
Mm-hmm.
And the latest one, which I'm now learning is called the Alpine Portal, which is the cemetery we tried to go to when you were here and my car kept overheating.
Yeah.
And that one, again, is very, very old, but apparently the whole area is just steeped in weirdness. So
yeah. That's the one we went to with Natalie the next time I came, right? Or
yeah, that's right. Okay, yeah. Which I still haven't put the video up for because I haven't had time to edit all the stuff in I want to do. Because I have a video from my friend Keith who told me about the place. from like a year earlier and a bunch of pictures. So I want to sit down and kind of just weave it all together, and I just have not had the time or energy to do it. So I have that yet to come. That'll be put up on the YouTube when I get a chance to do it. But again, it wasn't really a spooky place other than the fact that there was just no sound.
Yeah. Yeah, that it did not feel creepy, but yeah, there was no sound. But, I know this is where you're going to some degree, too, because, sometimes cemeteries end up being places for people to gather that don't quite fit in anymore. One way or the other, either you're in high school hanging out. One of the my favorite stories that was sort of a counter on the Robert Johnson legend was he, and I forget who he actually learned to play guitar from, would practice in the cemetery at night because that was a safe place for them to be, and they didn't have to worry about running into people that didn't appreciate persons of color around and those kinds of things. And there's also a little hoodoo to that of, the ancestors making you better. But that's a really positive spin on, Robert Johnson versus Crossroads and selling your soul at midnight kind of thing to the devil.
True. But there's been a lot of graveyards I've gone to. There's nothing really weird about them. Like, I've never been in them and been like, oh, no, that's creepy. I mean, there's been a ton of them. Because I like looking at some of the sculptures and stuff like that. I've done a lot of graveyard photography. And more often than not, I don't really think graveyards are haunted. But I think certain locations are that happen to also be graveyards. Like with the Alpine...
That makes a lot of sense.
The Alpine Portal thing, I think it's that whole area. It just happens that there's a cemetery, an old cemetery in disrepair in the middle of it. I don't think that there are dead people there going, oh, you let our graves fall apart. I think when you're dead, you have better things to do than hang around a graveyard. It makes sense
that, I was going to say it makes sense that there would be things happening that you would encounter there that are not necessarily associated with the people that are buried there. Because if you think of a really weird analogy, if you go to a junkyard, you can run into a lot of people doing things there, but you're not going to run into traffic.
Right.
Yeah.
Interestingly, I find that the haunted one in Ithica, a lot of people will jog through because of its location. So you got a lot of joggers, dog walkers. If you go there during the day, you're almost certainly going to run into people just kind of randomly walking through. There's also a whole bunch of houses right on the part of the graveyard driveway is also a driveway that leads to where all these houses are. So which makes it even more liminal. And there's a big one in Rochester, Mount Hope, where we shot some of Gateways to Begonia, and never had anything weird happen there. It's a huge graveyard, but again, you have people who just go jogging through it. Every time we've been there, we've run into people just kind of walking through the graveyard, walking their dogs, jogging, etc. So I don't know if that makes a difference, but I mean, in a sense, there's a lot of people there. They're just not mourners per se.
Mm-hmm.
But most of them, there's another one in Ithaca called Lakeview. It's a very nice graveyard. Nothing weird's ever happened there. So it's, I don't know. I wouldn't say that no graveyards are haunted. I just don't know if they're haunted because they're graveyards.
It makes sense. I like that. I didn't think about location.
And we are out of time. So, Katie, people can find you
on YouTube. Just type in Katie of the Night, and that's Katie.
And Mr. Matt Festa.
You can find me on Instagram, Tiamat's Garden.
Is there anything else?
Also Facebook. It's the same thing posted in both places.
Oh, okay. All right. And SuperSaxonMan?
I'm around here, and you can probably find me on Instagram too, but under Super Inframan instead of Super Saxon Man. I need to fix that. I feel like I offend Matt if I don't.
Got to do some art of you and Super Inframan doing the fusion dance.
There we go. Oh, that would be awesome.
All right. Well, thank all three of you. I think this went well.
It was a blast.
Thank you, Seriah.
I want to give a shout out here to all of my patrons. It is because of you that this show is possible. And I want to give a shout out to those pledging $10 or more. Greg Ross, Billuminati, Leanne Cherry, Matt in Delaware, Allison Cook, Super Inframan, 36 Dingo, Tim, Andrew Nichols, Matthew Sproul, Christine, a blue second-gen MR2 drifting around a Japanese mountain, Patricia Gaia-Quinta, Alex Whitcomb, American Rambler, Andrew Maines, Ann Witowski, Barbara Fisher, Beverly Williamson, Big Boy Limina, Bright Rectangle, Charles Davis, Charles in Florida, Legend of the Crazy Incommunicable, CJ, Craig Parmenter, Diane B., MTK, Eric Citron, Eric Todd, History and Coffee, J Otto Bullitt, Jack Huntington, James Lindsay, Jim and Sophie, John Mattingly, John Bracken, Carla Mahoney, Kevin Schreck, Cool Kitty, Kristen L., Laser Printer Jam, Lauren McLean, Linda, Linz Jackson K., MJ Armstrong, Mark Brady, Mr. Weird, Oli Andre Olar, Paul Jeffries, Philosopher of Mirrors, Riker and Stark, Ron Dupre, Sam Sharon, Schmooples, Devourer of Mortal Souls, Matthew, Andrew Malone, Stacy Sherwood, Strange Stories with the Seeker and Skeptic podcast, Tactical Therapist, Taylor Bell, Thunderboy, Tyler Glimstead, Varosh K., Vincent Trewell, Will Gebhard, Will Powell, Ren Collier, Annabelle Smith, Caroline Walker, TDT Skunkworks, A Crocodile, and Craig Sagastumi. Thank you all so very, very much. There is a Patreon-only segment, of course, to this show that patrons will get in a few days. And if you want to become a patron, it's only $3, $3, that's it. And it helps out the show immensely, and you get extra content regularly, every week. And sometimes more than once a week. All right, as far as Albatwitch went, man, I got down there at 3. It had been raining all day. There were not a lot of people there, and everyone started packing up by 4. So I was there for about an hour, but got to meet a few cool listeners and have some nice conversations with them. So I very much enjoyed that. Gave out some free copies of the documentary that Chris did on the show. And that will be available eventually in other forms. We also have a cool swapcast coming up with Strange Familiars. It will probably be the next show, hopefully. And that one was absolutely awesome, as you will see. Or hear, I guess. Okay, I want to welcome a couple of new patrons this week. Matthew and Short-Sighted Farseer. I hope you guys enjoy the content. And there's lots more to come. And I will see you next time. You have been listening to Where Did the Road Go? This show is made possible in part from our Patreons, and we thank you and everyone listening for helping us continue this exploration of the strange. You can always find everything Where Did the Road Go related at www.wheredidtheroadgo.com. And thank you so much for your support.